Summer, 1940. The world stands on the edge of darkness. In less than a year, Hitler's war machine has devoured an entire continent. Poland, crushed in weeks. Denmark and Norway, swept aside like dust. France, the mighty French Empire, brought to its knees in just 6 weeks. From the Atlantic to the borders of Russia, the Nazi swastika flies unchallenged. One by one, the free nations of Europe have fallen silent. And now, across a narrow strip of water called the English Channel, Adolf Hitler turns his gaze toward the last nation still defying him, Great Britain. Alone, exhausted, outgunned, most of the world believes Britain's defeat is only a matter of time. But what Hitler is about to discover is that some battles cannot be won by tanks and soldiers alone. Because this time, the battlefield won't be on land, it will be 20,000 feet above it. This is the story of the Battle of Britain, where a few hundred young men, strapped into machines of wood and metal, stood between tyranny and freedom, where the sky itself became the front line, and where the fate of the free world hung in the balance, one dogfight at a time. The year is 1940. Europe has fallen silent, not in peace, but in fear. Let's rewind for a moment. How did it come to this? September 1st, 1939. Germany invaded Poland with overwhelming force. The Blitzkrieg, lightning war, shocked the world. Tanks, dive bombers, and mechanized infantry moved with terrifying speed and coordination. Warsaw fell, Poland surrendered within weeks. Britain and France declared war on Germany, but they could do nothing to save Poland. The conflict everyone feared had begun. Then came the winter, the phony war, when both sides waited, preparing for what was to come. But in April 1940, the waiting ended. Germany invaded Denmark and Norway in a lightning campaign. Denmark fell in hours. Norway fought bravely but was overwhelmed within weeks. Then, on May 10, 1940, Hitler unleashed his fury on Western Europe. In just a few months, Adolf Hitler's armies had crushed Poland, conquered Norway, rolled through Belgium and the Netherlands, and forced France to its knees. The Maginot Line, France's supposedly impregnable fortress system, was bypassed entirely. German panzers swept through the Ardennes forest, a route the French thought impassable. The Battle of France lasted just 6 weeks. 6 weeks to destroy an empire that had stood for centuries. By June 22, 1940, France had signed an armistice. Hitler forced the French to surrender in the same railway car where Germany had surrendered in 1918. It was his ultimate act of humiliation. The Nazi war machine seemed unstoppable. Across Europe, the lights went out. Swastikas flew over Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, and Copenhagen. Fascist Italy joined the war on Germany's side. The Soviet Union, bound by a non-aggression pact, watched from the east. And now, there was only one nation left standing in Hitler's path, Great Britain. Across the English Channel, the British Isles waited, battered, isolated, and alone. The British Expeditionary Force had barely escaped from Dunkirk in late May and early June. Over 330,000 Allied soldiers were evacuated, but they left behind all their heavy equipment, tanks, artillery, vehicles. Britain's army was saved, but it was in no condition to fight. No one believed they could survive. The United States remained neutral. The Soviet Union was Hitler's ally, for now. Britain stood alone against the most powerful military force the world had ever seen. In London, a new prime minister had just taken office, Winston Churchill, a man whose speeches would become as legendary as the battles themselves. On June 18, 1940, Churchill addressed Parliament with words that would define the coming struggle. What General Vaughan called the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned on us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. Asterisk. But what Hitler didn't expect, was that the battle for Britain would not be fought on the ground. It would be fought in the sky. The Luftwaffe, Germany's mighty air force, prepared for what Hitler called Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain. The Luftwaffe was massive. It had over 2,600 aircraft ready for the assault, bombers, fighters, dive bombers. It was the largest air force in the world, battle-tested and victorious in every campaign. Leading the Luftwaffe was Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, a World War I flying ace and one of Hitler's most trusted commanders. Göring was supremely confident. He boasted that his airmen would crush the RAF in days. But before the German troops could set foot on English soil, they needed one thing: air superiority. Without control of the skies, a seaborne invasion would be suicide. The Royal Navy still ruled the seas. German barges and transport ships would be sitting ducks if British planes could attack them. Hitler was certain it would be easy. The British Royal Air Force was small, outnumbered, and tired. They had lost hundreds of aircraft in the Battle of France. Their pilots were exhausted. Their resources were stretched thin. On paper, it looked hopeless. But numbers can never measure courage. July 10, 1940. The Battle of Britain begins. The skies over the English Channel become a storm of smoke, fire, and steel. German bombers roar in from the south, escorted by squadrons of Messerschmitt fighters. Heinkel He 111s, Dornier Do 17s, and Junkers Ju 87 Stuka dive bombers filled the skies, their engines creating a sound that struck fear into anyone who heard it. Their target: radar stations, airfields, factories, cities, anything that could cripple Britain's defense. The first phase of the battle focused on shipping convoys in the Channel and coastal targets. The Germans wanted to test Britain's defenses, to probe for weaknesses. But the RAF was waiting. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, the commander of RAF Fighter Command, had prepared for this moment. Dowding was a quiet, methodical man, not given to grand speeches. But he understood air warfare better than anyone. He had divided Britain into groups and sectors, each responsible for defending a specific area. He had invested heavily in radar technology, a secret weapon that would prove decisive. The chain-home radar stations along Britain's coast could detect incoming German aircraft from miles away, giving RAF pilots precious minutes to scramble and intercept. Pilots as young as 18 climbed into their Spitfires and Hurricanes, sleek, deadly machines that would soon become legends. The Supermarine Spitfire was fast, agile, and beautiful, a masterpiece of engineering. Its elliptical wings and Rolls-Royce Merlin engine made it one of the finest fighters ever built. The Hawker Hurricane was tougher, more rugged. It could take a beating and keep flying. About 60% of the RAF's fighter force consisted of Hurricanes, and they would bear the brunt of the fighting. They scrambled from fields hidden in the countryside, their engines screaming as they soared into the gray skies. The order would come through: scramble. Bandits incoming, Angels 2-0. Meaning enemy aircraft at 20,000 feet. Pilots would sprint to their planes, pulling on flight gear as they ran. Ground crews would help them strap in. Engines would cough to life, propellers spinning faster and faster. And then they were airborne, climbing hard, throttles wide open, racing toward the enemy. Above the clouds, men danced with death. Dogfights raged like chaotic ballets, twisting, diving, bursting with gunfire. The sky became a maze of vapor trails, tracer rounds, and burning metal. Planes spun and dove, locked in deadly combat. The sound was deafening, engines roaring, machine guns chattering, explosions echoing. A German Messerschmitt Bf 109 would dive on a Hurricane, guns blazing. The British pilot would brake hard, pulling the stick back, feeling the G-forces press him into his seat. Every second was a heartbeat between life and death. One RAF pilot would later say, "You didn't think about fear. You thought about the man in front of you, and making sure he went down before you did." Flying Officer Geoffrey Wellham, one of the youngest Spitfire pilots, described it. "Time stands still. Your world shrinks to the gun sight, the stick in your hand, and the enemy plane in your crosshairs. You fire. You see strikes. You hope he goes down. Then someone's on your tail, and you're the hunted." Asterisk. The pilots were a diverse group. Many were British, but there were also Poles, Czechs, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans, Americans, Irish, and even a few free French pilots. The Polish squadrons, like No. 303 Squadron, fought with particular ferocity. They had lost their homeland to the Nazis and fought with a burning desire for revenge. No. 303 would become the highest-scoring RAF squadron of the battle. These men flew multiple sorties a day. They would land, refuel, rearm, and take off again. Exhaustion was constant. Sleep was a luxury. Between July and September, the intensity grew. By early August, the Luftwaffe shifted tactics. They began targeting RAF airfields directly, trying to destroy the fighters on the ground and wipe out the infrastructure. This was Eagle Day, Adler Tag, August 13, 1940. Göring's plan to destroy the RAF in a single, massive offensive. Over the next 2 weeks, the Luftwaffe launched wave after wave of attacks. Hundreds of bombers escorted by fighters struck airfields across southern England. RAF Manston, Hawkinge, Biggin Hill, Kenley, these bases were hit again and again. Craters pockled the runways. Hangars burned. Aircraft were destroyed on the ground. The RAF was bleeding. Pilot losses were unsustainable. For every German plane shot down, the RAF was losing fighters and, more critically, experienced pilots. Hugh Dowding faced an impossible choice: throw everything into the fight and risk total collapse, or conserve his forces and risk losing air superiority. He chose to fight smart. He rotated squadrons, pulling exhausted units from the front and replacing them with fresh ones. He prioritized bombers over fighters, let the escorts go, destroy the bombers. But the strain was showing. By early September, fighter command was on the brink. And then, Hitler made a mistake. On the night of August 24, 1940, a German bomber crew made a navigation error. They dropped their bombs on London, a target they had not been authorized to hit. It was an accident, but Churchill saw an opportunity. The next night, he ordered the RAF to bomb Berlin. Hitler was furious. Berlin, the heart of the Reich, had been struck. Göring had promised it would never happen. In a fit of rage, Hitler ordered a change in strategy. Forget the airfields. Bomb London. Make the British people suffer. It was exactly what the RAF needed. When the Luftwaffe failed to destroy the RAF in the skies, Hitler changed tactics. He unleashed the Blitz. On September 7, 1940, the Blitz began. Over 300 German bombers, escorted by 600 fighters, darkened the skies over London. The docks, the East End, and the city centre erupted in flames. Night after night, German bombers rained fire on London, Coventry, and dozens of other British cities. The Luftwaffe targeted factories, railroads, ports, and residential neighborhoods. The goal was to break British morale, to terrorize the population into demanding surrender. Homes burned. Families hid in basements and subway tunnels as the world above them turned to ash. The London Underground became a massive air raid shelter. Thousands of people descended into the tube stations every night, laying out blankets and trying to sleep as bombs fell overhead. Children were evacuated from the cities to the countryside. Gas masks were issued. Blackout curtains covered every window. The sound of air raid sirens became part of daily life, a wailing, haunting cry that warned of death from above. But Britain did not break. Through the flames, a voice spoke to the nation, the voice of Winston Churchill. He said, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be, we shall never surrender." Those words became more powerful than any bomb. Churchill walked through the rubble of bombed-out neighborhoods, cigar in hand, flashing his famous V for Victory sign. He visited shelters, spoke to firefighters, and stood with the people. His presence alone gave them strength. The British people developed a grim sense of humor. They made tea in the ruins of their homes. They put up signs reading, "Business as usual," in front of bombed shops. They refused to be cowed. As the battle raged on, the RAF held strong. The radar network, Britain's secret weapon, gave them eyes in the sky, guiding pilots to intercept waves of German aircraft before they reached their targets. Radar stations like those at Ventnor, Poling, and Dover fed information to Fighter Command headquarters at Bentley Priory. Controllers plotted the raids on massive map tables, moving markers to track enemy formations. Pilots were vectored toward the enemy with precision. It was a chess game played at 300 miles per hour. The Luftwaffe was suffering unsustainable losses. For every British plane shot down, Germany lost nearly 2. And critically, many RAF pilots who were shot down bailed out over Britain and returned to service. German pilots who bailed out became prisoners of war. By October 1940, the tide had turned. The Luftwaffe could not achieve air superiority. Their losses were too high. The RAF, against all odds, was still in the fight. Hitler's invasion was cancelled. Operation Sea Lion was postponed indefinitely. Without air superiority, a cross-channel invasion was impossible. For the first time, Nazi Germany had been defeated. The Battle of Britain officially ended on October 31, 1940. The cost had been enormous. The Battle of Britain claimed over 40,000 civilian lives and thousands of brave airmen. The RAF lost 544 pilots killed and over 1,500 aircraft destroyed. The Luftwaffe lost nearly 2,700 aircraft and over 2,600 airmen killed or captured. British cities lay in ruins. Families mourned sons, fathers, brothers. The scars of war ran deep, But it proved something the world had begun to forget, that tyranny can be stopped, and that freedom is worth fighting for. Britain had survived. Against impossible odds, a small island nation had stood firm against the most powerful military in the world. The victory had profound consequences. It gave hope to occupied Europe. Resistance movements in France, Poland, Norway, and elsewhere drew strength from Britain's defiance. It convinced the United States that Britain could win. American support, material, financial, and eventually military, began to flow more freely. It shattered the myth of German invincibility. The Nazi war machine was not unstoppable. When the smoke cleared, Churchill spoke the words that would echo through history. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Those few, the young pilots who rose from the grass fields of England into the burning skies. They became immortal. Men like Douglas Bader, who flew with artificial legs and became an ace. Like Johnny Johnson, who would become the RAF's top-scoring fighter pilot. Like Sailor Mallon, the South African ace who developed combat tactics used throughout the war. And the ground crews, the mechanics, armorers, radar operators, air raid wardens, firefighters, and countless others who kept Britain fighting. The Battle of Britain wasn't just a victory. It was a message to the world, that even when surrounded by darkness, courage can light the sky. The sky was their battlefield, and their sacrifice became Britain's salvation. The young men who flew those Spitfires and Hurricanes didn't know they were making history. They were just doing their duty, fighting for their homes, their families, their way of life. But in doing so, they changed the course of human history. And today, when we look up at the blue skies over Britain, we remember that freedom is never free, and that heroes are not born from legend. They are born from necessity, from courage, and from the simple refusal to give in when all hope seems lost. This was the Battle of Britain, and it was their finest hour.